I rise today to speak in support of Bill S-240, an act which will designate the 11th day of September in each and every year as a National Day of Service. I was approached by the Canadian Coalition Against Terror and the Canadian 9/11 families, and I would like to call the attention of the Chamber to our two guests who have joined us today. Maureen Baznicki, she lost her husband Ken. He was one of the 24 Canadians killed on September 11th, 2009. And also with us today is Danny Eisen from the Canadian Coalition Against Terrorism. Welcome, and we appreciate you being here today. I was approached by this group asking us as senators to find a way to not only remember their loss, but to remind all of us of the many kindnesses of strangers and the many hands that reached out to someone in need during and since that horrific day. I support this bill because I believe we must remember what happened on 9/11 and remember those from 90 countries who lost their lives, including the 24 Canadians who perished. But we should also mark this day because it changed all of us forever, and we must turn the mourning into memory and the anger into action. Inspired by the American 9/11 families, the Canadians have asked us that we consider a National Day of Service. Bill S-240, the National Day of Service Act, is a unifying, nonpartisan bill that everyone can support. In March of this year, the U.S. passed a similar bipartisan bill called the Serve America Act, co-sponsored by 42 senators who worked together to create a constructive and compassionate way for generations to come to remember. Since the passage of the Serve America Act, thousands of organizations, nonprofits, faith-based, employers have all mobilized hundreds of thousands of Americans. People such as Tiffany Boehm in Chicago and her classmates, who launched a project to collect 2,974 pair of shoes, representing each person lost in the 9/11 attacks, and donate them to a homeless shelter. John Henry and Ellie Labriola of Southbury, Connecticut, who set up a lemonade stand the week before school began and raised more than $100 to donate to a school uniform drive for other school children in need. In Atlanta, Georgia, Lily Love and her friends delivered goodie baskets to fire and police stations as a way of paying tribute to the first responders of 9/11. This is the sort of volunteerism that we hope S-240 will recognize and inspire in this country. The National Day of Service Act is a very simple bill. There are not a lot of complicated clauses or legal language. It does not oblige us to participate or fund any ceremony. There are no mandatory provisions within the bill. It is simply about the spirit of giving back, or perhaps of paying it forward. And it began almost spontaneously. I remember that a friend whose son was supposed to be on a plane from Boston on 9/11 called to ask that if his boy made it to Toronto, could he have a place to stay? Of course. Family was already huddled together. We called friends and family together because we needed the safety and comfort of connectedness in the face of an act that shattered our comfort zone. That week, I was awaiting cancer surgery. Tuesday, the morning of the 11th, I rose early, making all the preparations that one does in the face of such uncertainty. Bills paid, will updated, and thank yous to those who had gathered as my safety net. I turned on my television to witness the unimaginable. As the towers defied the miracle of modern architecture and tumbled down, my father quietly noted that this would prove bigger than Pearl Harbor. Too young to remember the true devastation of war, but old enough to recollect the images of troops in our streets when Canada faced the threat of the FLQ, we all somehow understood together that the world had changed. I knew that my surgery would be delayed as the hospital, Sunnybrook, is a designated international trauma center, and hundreds of survivors, we all thought, would surely be flown to Canada for treatment. None came. There were none to come. I vowed that if I survived my own surgery, I would try to pay it forward. Still, I was struggling with the randomness, the profound unfairness of it all. thousands who simply boarded a plane or who rode the elevator to the office as they had done countless times before, perished for no other reason than they symbolized all that we cherish about our life. Our freedom, the freedom to work, to live, to love, to speak our mind, to disagree and criticize, and to make change. Several weeks later, I was honored to host the Canada Loves New York event at the behest of Senator Grafstein and others. Nearly 25,000 Canadians filled the famous Roseland Ballroom in New York City and spilled out onto that city's streets to show support. Prime Minister Chrétien came, as did Mayor Giuliani. Our singers and artists reached out with their voices and words and images of our flags entwined. And Canadian firemen and police honored their American colleagues and brought equipment and spirit and money to help. At the end of this amazing day, a nurse who had worked all night before getting in her car to drive the 10 long hours south had taken up a collection in her hospital coffee room. She sought me out and almost apologetically handed me the envelope with the $60 or so that she had collected. She asked only that it go to a family, to a widow or a child in need, and entrusted me with the task. The tears streamed down her cheeks. It was that simple yet extraordinary act that today motivates me to ask you, all of you, to support this bill, so that we might always find a reason in our hearts to make kindness a part of our life and to always act to counter the hatred that inspired the heinous acts of 9/11. Bill S-240 was introduced in this chamber in Senator Tkachuk's name on my behalf. I appreciate his willingness to do so because he too has worked tirelessly for the victims of 9/11 by introducing other bills, including S-233, the State Immunity Act, currently before this chamber, that would prevent foreign states from claiming immunity from Canadian courts relating to their support of terrorism, and it would amend the criminal code to provide victims who suffer loss or damage as a result of terrorism with civil means to seek some justice. His bill is supported by Amnesty International as well as human rights activists. And in the other place, we have Bill C-35, Victims of Terrorism Act, introduced by the government in June, which will also amend the State Immunity Act, which will allow victims' families to seek compensation for terrorist acts that happen outside Canada. All of this recognizes the victims' experiences and their suffering. And it also sends a clear message that Canada will hold the sponsors and perpetrators of terrorism accountable for their crimes, and will help stem the flow of money to terrorists and expose the states that allow it. With Bill S-240, a National Day of Service Act, the families hope to ensure that the lessons so painfully learned continue to resonate within our nation's heart, and to ensure that the passage of time or the ill will of others never somehow combine to diminish this tragedy. It will honor the victims of terrorism. It will pay tribute to all those who would not stand aside, but rather who stood up in the face of terrorism, particularly the men and women of our military. To those who have fallen in the fight and to their families, we can never repay your sacrifice, but we are grateful for the willingness of your loved ones to risk their lives to protect ours. And to those who still stand and fight so that this will never happen again, we honor you by understanding the true meaning of your mission, to create hope and to ensure that acts of kindness change lives. It honors the selfless service of our civilian and military volunteers, which is far more persuasive, far more powerful than the hate they battle every day. And this bill recognizes the spirit of our citizens, who through their acts of generosity to strangers are a powerful inspiration to our children. Thank you.